Each fall, the North Face Breckenridge brings a celebration of adventure to Summit County with the North Face Speaker Series. This year, climber Mark Synott manned the podium to talk about his mission to seek out and climb the world's most remote cliffs. During his presentation, it became clear that a serious amount of determination and a sense of humor are some of Mark's greatest tools in succeeding on his expeditions.
And I look in there and I'm like, wow. I'm like, that doesn't look like a good place to go. I'm like, but this is it. This is how I do it. This is how these guys get up this stuff. They go subterranean. I'm like, I'm going in. So I cinched up all my jacket and everything and my hood and put my collar on, and I was like, okay, I'm bold, man. I'm like, I'm doing this. And I crawled inside this thing, and it was awful. There was scorpions in there, tarantulas. I was clawing my way up. I was probably in there, without exaggeration, for like 2 hours. And I finally broke through, and I was at the base of the cliff, and I'm like, I made it. And I look up, and the guys are there. They're like, dude, where the hell have you been? There's this trail on the side over there. I'm like, you don't want to know, guys. It was bad.
I had the privilege of sitting down with Mark to find out how a boy from the suburbs of Boston became a professional climber and explorer. So Mark, how did you actually get started in the outdoor industry?
My dad was kind of an avid outdoorsman, and so he would take us up into the White Mountains in New Hampshire every weekend and take us skiing and stuff like that, and he took us to, you know, like all these outdoor sites, one of which was the local cliff, which is called Cathedral Ledge, and it's like a 500-foot granite cliff. So my dad took me there a lot when I was a kid to watch the climbers, and that's kind of how the seed got planted, and I got kind of inspired to become a climber. One of the amazing things about mountain climbing in particular is that the mountains are these real things that are out there. So you can dream about climbing them, and then when you get there, all you have to do is like hike up and grab onto the holds at the bottom, you know, and start pulling yourself up. So it's a tangible goal that's attainable, you know, for anybody.
How did you take it from just something where climbing was something you did for recreation into actually making a career out of it?
I actually went to the career counseling center at the school that I went to, and I took a little bubble test to figure out what I would be good at. And the computer like printed out this list of like 20 different jobs, you know. And I remember going down the list and just crossing them all off and being like, no, none of those are gonna work. And then I came back and my dad was like, so, you know, what career are you gonna have? What's it gonna be? And I was like, well, I kind of decided I'm actually not gonna have one. You can imagine like that was a little upsetting for him. You know, he worked hard to like, you know, put me through school and all that, and then I told him I kind of wanted to be a climbing bum. But what I did was I put kind of my Yankee work ethic, which I did have from kind of growing up in that kind of family in Boston, towards climbing. And, you know, it was really all I cared about. So I worked really, really hard on my climbing and, you know, working my way up through the ranks kind of in an apprenticeship, you know, where I incrementally sort of took on harder and bigger climbs. And this was all building up to like my first like, you know, epic climbing trip, which was Baffin Island up in Arctic Canada in 1995. And I came back from one trip up there where we spent like 40 days climbing this huge sea cliff coming out of the ocean, and I realized that I kind of had a cool story to tell there, and I wasn't looking forward to going back to my construction job. So I went to the library, I put together a list of like all colleges, universities, climbing gyms and such, and I did a mailing, and I got like 25 slideshows lined up. And so I quit my construction job and I moved into my Subaru, and I spent 2 years touring all over the country doing my show and just climbing, and that's kind of how it all started.
How did you actually transition into writing for magazines like Climbing or for Outside and getting into that part of your career?
Well, I got into writing around the same time. One thing that I did, which was kind of crucial towards the whole path that I ended up following, was I worked as an intern at Climbing Magazine, and I went and I worked for them for a few months, kind of learning about magazine writing, and I wrote a couple of little pieces, and I got paid like $50, you know, or something, but I was kind of proud of myself that I, you know, got paid for something that I had written and created. So after I came back from this big trip in Baffin Island, I got a big article with them, and so then I kind of thought about how I could combine writing about these adventures with telling the stories, you know, with the slide presentations, and then getting some sponsors that would help to kind of support the whole thing. And once I realized that that was an option, I set my sights on it, you know, pretty seriously, and, you know, have never looked back since then. That was about 15 years ago.
Being a North Face athlete, there's a lot that's involved in that besides just going on these amazing expeditions. So what are some of your responsibilities as an athlete for the North Face?
You know, when you spend as much time in the outdoors as I do, you end up thinking a lot about your gear. And you're always looking at ways to improve it, or you're really appreciative when you have something that's working just right. And, you know, the North Face athlete team, one of our sort of most important roles is to work directly with the designers and the developers to, you know, test things that are already in the pipeline, to come up with new ideas, and to hopefully like innovate entirely new technologies and stuff like that that people haven't seen, you know, in the outdoors before.
Are there certain pieces that we can find right here in Breckenridge that you've had a hand in designing?
One of the products that I have been really passionate about for a long time is a jacket called the Red Point Optimus, and I was pushing for that thing back in the day. You know, before we had a coat like this, which is basically, it's a synthetic puffy coat. And, you know, back in the old days, I was doing all this stuff with like a down jacket, but, you know, down can be problematic when it gets wet, and I really wanted to see like a puffy, warm coat that you could wear that was synthetic, that, you know, could still keep you warm and everything when it got wet. So myself and some other athletes kind of pushed for this idea, and they came out with this thing. I got my first one, I think, back in like '99 for an expedition to a big mountain in Nepal called Janu. And I remember I wore the thing 24 hours a day for the entire expedition, and then pretty much I just never stopped. What makes this thing so beautiful in my mind is the fact that it's simple. It doesn't have a lot of fancy bells and whistles. It's just a basic jacket with a hood that fits good and a pocket where you need it, and you got your hip pockets. And I have climbed like thousands and thousands of days in this coat right here, and I really, every once in a while I send them a message, and I'm like, just make sure you never get rid of the Red Point Optimus, or if you're going to, let me know so I can order like a dozen of them and just have them on standby in my closet.
With all of your adventures taking you across the world, you're obviously not home a whole lot. So how do you balance the two, the family life and also these adventures?
Well, I guess I would say that the toughest thing about this whole endeavor that I'm engaged with is the fact that it takes you away from home a lot. And to be successful with all this, I think you have to, you know, be super determined and really give it everything that you have, and you have to kind of take every opportunity that comes up. That is an ongoing struggle for me, and I haven't really figured it out, but I guess what I did figure out is that focusing on balancing that better than I have been in the past, I think, is kind of like the main objective for me now, and that just a shift in focus, I think, has made a huge difference. So it's all like running pretty smoothly at the moment.
Why is it so important for you to be a part of the North Face Speaker Series?
The North Face has done a tremendous amount to kind of foster like the whole sport and the entire outdoor community, and I want to kind of spread the word and let people know about that, because I think it's really awesome, you know, and you know, we want to make sure that you know, these things are inspiring the next generation, you know, so that they'll be out there and can kind of pick up where we left off. And there is a lot of unexplored territory still out there.